Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Carnival Row Season 2, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So picking up in the aftermath of last episode, vignettes put in front of a human court and everything like that, and obviously everyone in the burg is like, boo, boo her. I love Don Babe, spinning his story, being like, oh yeah, there was like a dozen of them, and I fought them off, and I even love he almost slipped up. He was like, I would have been done for if it wasn't, and he stopped, and they're like, if it wasn't for, and it's like, yeah, because he can't admit the truth of, well, one, it wasn't that many, it was only 3 Fae, but, he can't admit that. His pride. He also wants to make himself look better. He was even telling the reporters, like, oh, make sure you spell my name right. But it's like, yeah, he also can't give Philo any credit because Philo is a disgraced cop. He's a half-breed, quote, critch. So, of course, they're not going to give him his flowers, especially Dombe in that regard. So he had to kind of be like, yeah, I'm just collecting my thoughts, sir. It's like, yeah. Because it'll make you look bad if you had to be saved by a half-breed like Philo. Like, of course, that's going to sting. And you yourself can never admit it because it pisses you off that he's the one that saved your life. You owe your life to Philo. But, yeah, when Vignette... I was hoping Vignette was going to spit some venom at him. I mean, she quite literally did. I mean, literally spit, but not... I thought she was going to be like, yo, why are you telling this tall tale? Oh, I could have sworn that you wouldn't be around right now if it wasn't for, Philo saving you, and it was only 3 of us. I thought she was going to... But she's like, nah, I'm not even going to give you the time of day. Just spit at you, and it riled up the crowd. Because Vignette's seen human hatred before, like how vile humans can be. She's seen that. But I don't think I think that's why this kind of got her. I mean, first and foremost, it's scary to know, right, you might be approaching your death, but seeing this much vile hate, she's never been on this type of receiving end where she's being paraded around and people hate her with such fury. Because, like I said, she's seen the human hate before, but never to this extreme. And so I think there's also that element, like I said, just knowing what's awaiting you, knowing this is the end. And it's I don't know, I'm not going to go as far as saying that Vignette regretted the way she approached things, but it's also kind of goes in line with what Philo had wondered about. But for her, it's what was I supposed to do? Sit back and do nothing with just the way humans continue to act towards Fae? Yes, this might be on me right now, but it's a part of it's a symptom of something much larger, So at the same time that's going down, Philo's trying to find a way to save Vignette. At the same time, Kane's trying to kill him, but Philo was like, nah, I got this. I already knew you were coming, and it turns into a bit of a tussle, but he comes out on top. What I thought was interesting, though, it's Kane was like, how did you know I was there? He was like, I don't know. I knew. He's like, in fact, no, I felt like I knew you were following me, but he's like, I can't explain it. And Kane was like, right, you might be a lot more Picts than you even admit. So maybe there's kind of a sixth sense that Picts have about each other. He felt something in the air. So I guess a little bit more of that Fae is coming out of Philo this season in that regard. And that might be a key factor this season. We'll see. But that was just such an interesting thing because we've never really gotten that before when it comes to Philo, especially the more Fae side of things. So I'm wondering, it feels like that's going to be a key component in this, but we'll ultimately have to wait to see in that regard. But I thought that was such an interesting little thing to kind of add in there. It doesn't, but ultimately, because I was wondering whether Kane knew about Philo, and it's well, of course he does, because everyone in the row knows about Philo being half human, half Fae. It's yeah, that's why he's here in the first place. So yeah, everyone in a row knows. So, because when Kane saw his back, I don't know if that was the first time Kane had probably never seen someone been, he's probably seen people who's been weaned before, but probably not to that degree or whatever. So I thought that's what he was focusing on, but I guess he kind of felt bad because he realizes right, you do love Vignette and you're willing to do anything and everything for her. And especially considering in his regard where sadly, Kane knows what it's like to be in a situation to lose the woman you love. So obviously it really resonates with him, Philo's love for Vignette. It's right, she may hate my guts right now, but I don't want her to die because he loves her that much, despite their complicated current circumstances. So Tourmaline, worried about Vignette, ended up tapping into her Horospex powers and ended up seeing a vision through, not just seeing it, but she saw it through Vignette's eyes, which is, and I think that's something to keep in mind, because anytime Tourmaline's like had her visions before, she's been from the monster's perspective. This time she was in Vignette's point of view, and she saw Vignette about to be executed. And Darius was telling her multiple times not to go down this route. It's like, right, use what the Mima gave you and cure yourself, because it's like, right, what would Vignette want you to do in this situation? Sacrifice yourself for her sake or save yourself? But Tourmaline loves and cares about Vignette too much to just let her go. So luckily she got her vision, because Kane and Philo were going to immediately go like, no, we're going to go tomorrow, but it's like they had to move things up because she's getting executed tonight. We see what kind of ultimately led to that, but nevertheless. At the same time this is all going down, Weintraub ended up finally bringing evidence to Jonah about what Sophie's been up to, and he takes it a step further. It's not just about the capital she's building from these factories that she owns a large stake in now. She's also buying up enough people to replace your people on like on the seats, so that she can buy herself into basically the position of like buying enough supporters to basically oust you as chancellor and take over. And for Jonah, that was the real heavy blow. And it's like, oh, she's not working alone. So it was either that ends up correlating with the Millworthy thing, or it more so correlates with they found out that she was working with Nilly, her puck friend slash servant slash maid, which they were happy about. You know, they got those work releases for those in the row, and obviously Nilly's brother was amongst them. And it's like, right, step closer with all the money she's getting from the deal that was made with the pact and all the money she was making, one step closer to becoming chancellor. Which, really quickly, with the Millworthy thing, him and Vera were talking, which Vera's like, I looked into you enough to know, like, right, the fact is, I know you already had some ulterior motive, because I already saw you as someone that had some pro-Fae leanings. And now I'm feeling like, now that you set everything set up everything up so that all these Fae got released for work, makes me super suspicious of you. So, because I love they had that whole conversation, because it's like, yeah, I used to be a theater person, and it's like, yeah, that's all politics is. It's theater. It's like, oh, how lo and behold, how very true that is. But it's the conversation of, right, leave my reasons to me, and you kind of back off and leave your melodrama for the stage. I was like, ooh, I love the way he phrased that, because it's like, yeah, Vera's kind of getting a little too nosy for his own good, for Millworthy's comfort. But you had Jonah summoning they were, maybe she didn't summon him, maybe he didn't summon her, maybe she just stopped by, but he prepared this like fancy dinner. I was like, I was waiting at any moment, I was like, is he going to pull the rug underneath her, like, oh yeah, I know what you've been up to? But no, he was kind of keeping it pleasant. I figured he was playing, I thought he was going to play it up, and especially when he was like, oh yeah, that marriage proposal you suggested last season, yeah, let's push that, let's do it. And he wanted to see what her response was going to be. And she was like, right, sure. And they kissed, but she was like, right, we should do that after the election. She was like, right, I completely understand. Oh, you have other obligations, sure. I think Jonah was trying to use that as an opportunity for her to get out of, like, because you saw him afterwards, it was just kind of like, for him, it's like, what Weintraub brought to him, he believed, but I think he was hoping that if he could get Sophie to marry him, it's like, choose me, being with me, and what we can do together over your solo ambitions. If you're willing to marry me, that means you're willing to put that aside. But the fact is she isn't. It's like, right, your ambitions are too big. You're still gunning for the position of chancellor. I think he legitimately was hoping that he'd be able to kind of sway her away from that without letting her know he knew, because he wanted her choice to be genuine. But the fact is, her choice was genuine. She still stuck to her guns of her ambition, and for him, it bothered him, because he legitimately did get sucked up into the whole thing of like, right, we're in this together. It's like, you manipulated me, you used me, knowing first and foremost, like, he is the only one who does know that Sophie is responsible for setting everything in motion last season with Piety. It's like, she's the one that forged that letter from Aisling, and it was like, oh yeah, like saying like she was going to expose the truth, and that set Piety on like her killing spree just to cover everything up and kind of forge that future for Jonah. Well, like, he kind of thought like, right, we're in this together, we're both our complicated circumstance, we're brother and sister, so he was just hoping, but she broke his heart. So the moment it's like, oh man, Sophie, you have to come with us, Miss Longerbane. Yeah, it turns out that Pix virus thing, like that sickness, it passes to Pucks. I'm like, the fact is they chose a Puck specifically had to be because they know about Nilly. But it's like, okay, now you might be infected as a human. But then she's like, wait, we're not going to the hospital. You're not doctors. It's like, no, you're under arrest. And the moment they show up at a prison, I'm like, oh, that's the same prison Vignette is being sent to. I was like, very, very interesting. So I love that Tourmaline wanted to go, but Philo was like, no, because if I go in there, if I bring you in there, there's a good chance you won't come out. Plus, Kane's the one over there that's got the death wish. Understandably so, because he wants to be reunited with Ona in shape or form. Yeah, if I'm still alive to do some good, sure, but if I go down in a blaze of glory, I'm fine with that too. I get reunited with the one I love, so. But Sophie and Vignette had some words exchange, and I was like, I think this is the first time they've ever been in a scene together, and I was like, would Vignette really even know anything about her? But it's like, right, you're one of the higher ranking people that pushed for the row to be. It's like, oh, and you wanted to send all that medicine in, but the moment the newspapers were no longer around, after you put off you got your press and stuff like that, that's when it all disappeared. But Sophie legitimately did want to make a change. She had to play the game, play the role that she was cast in, because the only way she was going to rise above all this was playing into like, hey, she had to get her father supporter on her side, so she had to appear anti-Faith, but she wasn't. Kind of like Jonah. I mean, he wasn't really anti-Fae, but he kind of had to lean into that for the sake of everything. But for Sophie, she legitimately hoped that when she got to the position of Chancellor, she could change things for the better, because she was a lot more progressive and open-minded than a lot of people in that circle. But it came from the perspective also of like, her and Vignette kind of connected. They're both rebellious. It's like neither one of them ever took too kindly to anyone telling them what to do. But it's like, right, we both come in our own cages. Yes, Fae folk, women, like we're always kind of told to stay in the cages we're in, and men don't like it when we notice the bars, because for her it's like, they locked me up because of my mind. I didn't show my might. That's what they should have been afraid of, my might, not just my mind. It's actually both they should have been afraid of. And I think because she said, like, all men really listen to, all they'll adhere to is violence. And I wonder if all that kind of hit Vignette, because it's like, I think because she's been someone herself personally who's been kind of leaning towards violence, and Philo's the one that's kind of trying to tell her not to go down that route. So I wonder if she's kind of viewing like, oh, I've kind of had the opposite experience of Sophie. I mean, because she herself kind of fits more. There's parallels, but there's also massive differences, obviously, just aside from the Fae and the human aspect of it. But I think even between those short exchanges, it was interesting. We know, sadly, Millworthy ended up getting grabbed because Jonah found out about, because if they're going to find out about Sophie's secrets, of course they're going to find out about Millworthy. And I love his final line to Jonah being like, because Jonah was like, I trusted you, because he's the one that gave him the job, because he's like, you're the only one that would tell me things 100%. You'll keep it 100 with me. And Millworthy always has, but Jonah's never wanted to listen. It's like, I've been trying to keep it 100 with you. I wanted you to sway things more this way early in the season, but you wouldn't budge. And he's like, all I've ever done was try to protect you, even from yourself. But when it's all said and done, Jonah knows that, yes, he could legally execute Sophie without ramifications because she is a traitor. Well, he goes to her and has her he wants her to sign her confession, because it's like, right, if you do this, I don't have to kill you. once again, he does legitimately love her, and he doesn't want to, like, yes, I had to lock you up for your betrayal, but I don't want to execute you. Please don't make me execute you. But for her, it's like, no, I'm not going to be, like, submitting to you. You want to do this? Then go right ahead. And because Vignette spoke up, it's like, okay, cool. I was like, oh, because at first I was like, oh, did she not see through Vignette's eyes, but actually Sophie's eyes? Like, then how did the wires get crossed? It's like, no, her, Millworthy, and Vignette are all getting executed. You're like, interesting. And the moment, like, because Philo's there, being like, oh yeah, because the plan is like, hey, I'll try and bring you in. I was like, oh, I'm bringing in a terrorist, Faye, and then you escape, you distract the guards, I'll go get Vignette. Well, Sophie was first on the chopping block. I was like, no way. I was like, there's no way they're not going to do it. They're not going to. And they executed Sophie. I was like, oh, the last, like, what, 10 minutes? It wouldn't even be 10 minutes. Because I think it was like at the 12-minute mark before Sophie got executed. I'd say, like, what? The last 7 minutes of this episode, I did not see coming. First and foremost, you executing Sophie. I was like, and telling Jonas, like, don't you dare look away. Look at me. And her head I was like, yo! With the way they were setting her up, I was like, I was like, Philo must going to interfere at some point. It's like, nope. I was like, wow. And then Vignette was on the chopping block. I'm like, I know she's not going to die, but Philo, you got to step in at some point, and it's not him. It's the monster that's whatever the hell that thing is. This is our first time getting a fully good look at it. Man, is that thing creepy as hell. That is some, like, the Dark Asher was pretty nightmare fuelish. This is some next level nightmare fuel shit. It's like, oh, like how it does it. I mean, and especially how it kills, in this episode, like, to some extent, it definitely gives me Midnight Mass vibes in some regard. It kind of reminds me of the thing from Midnight Mass, because it was kind of like bony and flesh-colored like that. Flesh-ish colored like that. I was like, oh, things swooping around, slicing and disemboweling people. You're like, holy shit. Pretty much murdered every police officer in that court. And then went after Jonah. I was like, is it going to, like, at first when the way it placed its hands on him, I was like, is it going to snap his neck? And it grabbed him because it has, like, mouths on the inside of its body, and it grabs on hold of him. I'm like, this thing is sucking him dry like a vampire. And especially because you hear the crunch, and then because I was thinking, like, the way the camera was turning, I was like, oh, we're going to, like, it circles back around and it's already completely devoured his body. He's like, no, it didn't. But then it just lets his body go. His entire chest is, like, exposed. Like, the flesh is ripped out. You see, like, organs. Poetically enough, his body drops dead right next to Sophie's severed head. How poetically ironic that she sadly wasn't around to see that go down. It's like, wow, holy shit, dude. Once again, Sophie dropping dead. I was like, wow, did not expect Jonah to drop dead too. It's like, interest, because I was thinking, like, maybe at the last second, like, before Sophie even died, I thought Philo would step in, and it's like, well, you're all here. I'm Break Spears' illegitimate son. I thought that'd be how Philo could really stop everything, but it didn't come down to that. That thing killed everybody, and then it got to Vignette, and by the time Philo and Kane got in there, Vignette was gone. I was like, wait, what? I was like, and that thing flew away. I'm like, that thing let Vignette go. And that's what I was bringing up before with Tourmaline. Every time Tourmaline had a vision, it was tied specifically to seeing things from that creature's perspective. I want to say the only exception being when she first had her vision of, like, Philo shooting at it, because we saw the creature above. It wasn't from the creature's perspective. It might have been from hers, but every other vision has been from this creature's perspective. And this time it was from Vignette's perspective. And now it's like this thing lets Vignette go. Because it is interesting because, like, once again, the human it killed, the officer it killed, was the one she let live back on her train in the first episode. And obviously she had some beef and smoke with Dahlia. She ended up dying. And it's like, right, Jonah and all these other people are about to execute you. And then this thing shows up to save you. It's like, what is this thing's deal? What is it, and who is it connected to? You'd have to assume it's somebody that's connected to Vignette, but how and why? I was wondering if it was they showed it for a little bit this season. The thing that Philo made last season with Samani, the thing that's like made from his jizz and all that other stuff that she made, it's like, yeah, as long as you're alive, this thing will be alive. Like his version of the Dark Asher, like brought together by other things, right? I think we saw that thing a little bit at the beginning of the season, but I was like, could there be a correlation there? Because, well, Philo would do anything to protect Vignette. So this thing could be driven by that force of anything that's perceived as a threat to Vignette. This thing could be acting upon that. So, because the thing it was like we saw was like a small like wormish thing, but I was like, I'm trying to remember the last time we saw it, because like I said, I want to say we saw it in the first or second episode. I was like, I want to say we saw it pre the monsters showing up, I think, before it took its first victim. So I'm wondering, did it kind of have like a butterfly metamorphosis thing? Did it change? And could that have some correlation to do with like him being like, oh yeah, I thought you were following me? Like, it could be his connection to that thing making him like, because it's out and about. When that guy just randomly got disemboweled, I was like, whoa, is this thing invisible like I thought it was? It's like, no, it's just moving so fast. It just like swooped by, disemboweled him, and moved on and just swooped around. And we have Philo and Kane just looking at it fly back towards the bird, but then they themselves are getting arrested. Now, you can't necessarily put this all on them, but they're still there without permission, and they'll probably be arrested, but they had nothing to do with this. Now, this would be the might not be the best opportune time, but it might be it might be the necessary opportunity to bring up the fact is, hey, I'm Breakspeare's son, especially considering the Chancellor is dead. I feel so bad for Nilly, because she's not going to have, because Nilly was still in hiding, and we have no idea, like, if they found out about her. I feel like if she had been found out, or wherever she's hiding, if they had found her, she would have been, brought to be executed too, but it was only Sophie there, so they must not be able to find Nilly. But aside from that, like, her best friend essentially is dead. Like, they had all these plans, and now that's kind of all gone, and she can't even be mad at Jonah, because, I mean, she can be, but he's dead now, so nothing she can do on that front. But Vignette being alive, maybe she can pass on what she heard from Sophie, and potentially what Philo wanted to do before. Might, once again, the opportunity presents itself. And, I mean, this also puts Philo in a position where he has to probably talk to Dombey and be like, yo, there were plenty of people here who saw that thing. That thing is the actual killer, not any of the Fae, yada, 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 so on and so forth. So, we will ultimately have to wait to see where episode 6 takes us with all of this. I'm very interested to see what happens next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.